Have you ever considered how the way you end your day can shape your spiritual journey? Praying before sleep isn't just a routine. It's a sacred opportunity to release your worries, refresh your soul, and embrace the peace that only God can provide. As Psalm 4:8 says, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." This verse reminds us that prayer is not just a path to physical rest, but also to emotional and spiritual restoration under God's loving protection. Tonight, we'll uncover 7 profound ways this simple practice can transform the way you rest, recharge, and rise each morning with renewed strength. If you've ever felt anxious or burdened at night, this message will show you how surrendering your day to God can calm your heart and restore your peace. Ready to explore the power of entrusting your nights to His care? If you believe in God's love, give this video a comment 111 and like, subscribe. When night comes and the world begins to quiet down, it's easy to feel the weight of the worries accumulated throughout the day. Each pending task, every mistake, or every unresolved thought seems to intensify in the dark. But it is precisely at those moments that God invites us to surrender everything we carry inside, freeing us from the burdens we were not designed to carry alone. Praying before sleep is not just a pious act. It is an opportunity to find rest in His presence and release what we cannot control. In His boundless love, Jesus calls us to draw near to Him with our struggles, anxieties, and fears. In Matthew 11:28-30, He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This invitation is not just for moments of collective prayer or for difficult days. It is for every moment when we feel we need a refuge. And in the tranquility of the night, when everything seems clearer or more overwhelming, it is when this promise of rest becomes a tangible reality. A woman shared how this practice transformed her nights. For years, she went to bed with her mind full of uncontrollable thoughts, replaying conversations, reviewing problems, and often imagining scenarios that would never happen. This not only robbed her of sleep, but also her peace. One day, a friend suggested that she start praying before bed, surrendering each of those thoughts to God. At first, it was hard. The words didn't come easily, and her mind kept running. But over time, she learned to simply say, "Lord, this is how I feel, this is what I think, I surrender it to you." Those nights began to change. Although not all of her circumstances improved, her ability to rest in God did. Praying before sleep is an act of trust. It is recognizing that even though we don't have all the answers, we serve a God who does. In Psalm 55:22, we are encouraged to cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall. These words remind us that God is not only willing to bear our burdens, but is also committed to holding us up while He does. When you take a moment before closing your eyes to speak with Him, you are declaring that you trust in His care more than in your own strength. This act of surrender also has a transformative effect on how you face rest. We live in a society that glorifies constant hustle, where stopping seems almost like a luxury. But God designed rest as an essential part of our lives. not only to renew our physical strength, but also to remind us that we depend on Him. In Psalm 4:8, the psalmist declares, "I will lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." This peace does not come from what we accomplish during the day or from what we plan to do tomorrow. It comes from knowing that we are with the Almighty God. A man shared how this truth changed his perspective on nights after facing a series of failures in his business. Each night became a battle of negative thoughts and fear about the future. For months he barely slept, and this affected his health, his family, and his faith. But one night, as he read the Bible, he found this verse in Psalm 4:8 and decided to take it as a personal promise. That same night, before going to sleep, he knelt down and said to God, "Lord, I don't know how to fix this, but I know you do. I surrender my business, my fears, and my family to you. Give me your peace." Although not everything changed immediately, he began to experience a rest he hadn't felt in a long time. And that peace gave him the clarity to make wiser decisions the next day. The nightly prayer doesn't have to be complicated or follow a specific format. It is a time to be completely honest with God, to talk to Him as you would to a close friend. You can tell Him about your joys, your frustrations, or even your doubts. In 1 Peter 5:7, we are told, "Cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you." This act of casting your burdens on God is liberating because it reminds you that you are not alone in your struggles. Jesus Himself showed us the power of prayer in the moments of greatest emotional load. In the Garden of Gethsemane, before facing the cross, He withdrew to pray. In Luke 22:41-44, we read, "He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, 'Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done.' An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him." This moment shows us that prayer doesn't always remove the challenges, but it strengthens us to face them with the grace and peace that only God can give. When you choose to pray before sleeping, you are opening a space for God to renew your mind and spirit. It is a moment when you can release the expectations you didn't meet, the mistakes you made, and the fears that still plague you. In Psalm 37:5, we are reminded, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this." This act of commitment is not just a symbolic gesture, it is an active decision to trust that God is working in everything, even while you sleep. A mother shared how this habit not only changed her nights, but also her children's nights. Before going to bed, they would gather in the living room to pray together, surrendering their days to God and thanking Him for His faithfulness. These moments not only brought peace to their home, but also strengthened family bonds and reminded them that in the midst of any challenge, God was with them. As you develop this habit, you will notice how your perspective begins to change. The worries that once seemed insurmountable become smaller when you place them at the foot of the cross. The tensions that kept you awake begin to dissipate as you remember that God is in control. And the peace you experience not only transforms your nights, but also how you face the next day. Praying before sleep is not just a spiritual practice, it is a declaration that you trust the God who never sleeps, the one who watches over you even in the darkest hours. When you close your eyes each night, you can rest assured that the one who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. This is the power of surrendering your concerns to God before sleeping. A rest that not only renews your body, but also your soul. Praying before sleep not only transforms the end of your day, but also renews your faith by reminding you of God's faithfulness. Each night, When you reflect on the moments you lived, you can see His hand in the big and small details that went unnoticed in the busyness. This time of prayer is like an anchor for the soul, a moment where you can look back and recognize that even in challenges, God was present, guiding you, protecting you, and holding you up. In Lamentations 3:22-23, we find a powerful truth that invites us to reflect at the end of each day. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. This passage not only assures us that God's love is constant, but also reminds us that His mercies are new every day. By praying before sleeping, you are recognizing that faithfulness and allowing it to renew your faith to face tomorrow with hope. A woman shared how this practice changed her daily perspective. For years, she ended her days focusing on what had gone wrong, the tasks she hadn't completed, the arguments she'd had, and the worries that overwhelmed her. However, she decided to start praying each night, taking time to reflect on the good things, big or small, that had happened. Maybe it was an unexpected encounter with someone who encouraged her, or the way a difficult situation was resolved unexpectedly. As she remembered these things in prayer, her attitude began to change. Instead of going to bed with a heavy spirit, she found gratitude and hope because she could see how God was working even in the hardest days. When you make nightly prayer a habit, you are training your heart and mind to focus on God's faithfulness. It doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or problems you faced, but seeing them through the lens of His grace. In Psalm 77:11-12, the psalmist declares, "I will remember the deeds of the Lord, yes. I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds." This act of remembering not only strengthens our faith, but also fills us with gratitude because it reminds us that the same God who was faithful in the past will be faithful in the future. A man, after years of feeling disconnected from his faith, decided to resume the practice of praying before bed. At first, he didn't know what to say, but he began simply thanking God for the things he could recognize, the air he breathed, the food he had, the people around him. Slowly, this practice awakened a sense of awe and gratitude that he had forgotten. Every night, as he reflected on God's faithfulness, his faith was renewed and he began to see God's work in areas of his life that he had previously overlooked. God's faithfulness doesn't always manifest in big miracles. Often it's found in the everyday details. A conversation that brought encouragement, a small achievement that seemed impossible, or even the strength to get through a challenging day. By taking time to pray and reflect, you are cultivating a spiritual sensitivity that helps you recognize these displays of His love and care. In Psalm 105:5, we are told, "Remember the wonders He has done, His miracles, and the judgments He pronounced." This call is not only an invitation to reflect, but also to remember that our faith is strengthened when we focus on what God has done. Jesus Himself showed us the importance of remembering God's faithfulness in moments of prayer. Before feeding the 5,000, He lifted up His eyes to heaven and gave thanks, recognizing the Father's provision even before the miracle happened. In John 6:11 we read, "Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish." This act of gratitude and recognition is a model for us, because it shows us that as we remember what God has done, we can also trust what He will do. Nightly prayer also helps us strengthen our relationship with God, because each night is an opportunity to recognize His faithfulness and surrender our concerns to Him. In 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18, we are urged, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. This call to constant prayer includes those moments at the end of the day when you can thank Him for what you lived through and entrust to His hands what is to come. A young man shared how this habit changed his way of seeing difficult days. During a season where he faced many failures, he decided to end each day by writing down one thing he could thank God for. Although at first it seemed hard to find something positive, he soon began to notice things that had previously gone unnoticed. The kindness of a friend, the way a complicated situation resolved unexpectedly, or simply the fact that God gave him the strength to keep going. These daily reflections not only renewed his faith, but also helped him face the future with more confidence in God's faithfulness. When we reflect on God's faithfulness, we are reaffirming our trust in His character. In Hebrews 13:8, we are assured, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. This truth gives us the certainty that the same God who was with us in the past will be with us in the future. When you pray before sleeping, you are remembering this divine constancy, which strengthens your faith and gives you peace to rest. Reflecting every night also plants a testimony for the future. The things you recognize today as evidence of God's faithfulness will be the same that will give you hope in the days to come. In Joshua 4, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, God commanded them to gather stones as a reminder of His faithfulness. These stones were a symbol so that in the future they could say, "This is what the Lord has done for us." Similarly, when you take a moment each night to reflect on His faithfulness, you are building a spiritual altar that will help you remember that God is faithful in all seasons. As you prepare to rest, think about how God was with you during the day. Maybe there were challenges that seemed insurmountable, but He gave you the strength to face them. Perhaps there were moments of joy that showed His love. Or maybe there were difficult lessons that taught you to trust Him more. All of this is evidence of His faithfulness, and by reflecting on it, you are strengthening your faith and preparing to walk confidently in His purpose. Every night as you close your eyes, you have the opportunity to remember that you do not walk alone. God's faithfulness is not just something that belongs to the past. It is a promise that is renewed each day. By praying and reflecting on His work, you are reaffirming your trust in His character and allowing that trust to transform your perspective, your rest, and your faith. The way you close your day not only affects how you rest, but also how you face tomorrow. Ending your day with a grateful heart transforms your attitude and prepares you to experience the peace and purpose that God has for you. Gratitude is not just a response to what God has done. It is a declaration of faith that acknowledges His goodness in all circumstances. Praying before sleep with a grateful spirit is an act of surrender that allows you to lay aside the worries of the day and focus on the blessings you received, big or small. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, Paul exhorts us to give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. In all circumstances, because this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. This instruction is not a suggestion, but a call to develop a thankful heart. Not because every situation is easy, but because we know that God is present in the midst of everything. When you choose to end your day with thanksgiving, you are cultivating a perspective that allows you to see the work of God even in difficult moments. A woman shared how this habit changed her life. For years, she went to bed filled with frustration, reviewing the things she hadn't accomplished or the mistakes she made during the day. This led her to sleep restlessly, and upon waking, that sense of dissatisfaction continued with her. But one day she decided that each night she would list 3 things she was thankful for. At first it was hard to find something positive, especially on the more difficult days, but little by little, this act of gratitude began to change her perspective. She learned to appreciate small moments like a smile, a meaningful conversation, or simply the strength to overcome a challenge. Over time, she noticed that her nights were quieter, and that she began each day with a renewed spirit. Gratitude does not deny difficulties, but helps you face them from a place of faith and trust. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This promise assures us that even in the midst of challenges, God is working on our behalf. By thanking before going to bed, you are declaring that you trust that he is in control, even when you don't understand everything that happens. Subscribe and comment 111. Stay blessed with more faith-filled content. Jesus himself taught us the power of gratitude in his ministry. Before feeding the 5,000, he gave thanks to the Father for the loaves and fishes he had, even though they seemed insufficient for the crowd. In John 6:11 we read, Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. This act of gratitude not only preceded the miracle, but it also shows us that gratitude does not depend on what we have, but on whom we serve. Praying with gratitude before bed also has a profound impact on how you see the day that has just ended. Instead of focusing on what didn't go as you expected, you can remember the ways God was present. Maybe it was an encouraging word from a friend, an unexpected solution to a problem, or even the strength to get through a difficult day. These are evidences of his faithfulness, and by thanking for them, you are training your heart to see his hand in every area of your life. A young man shared how this habit helped him overcome a season of discontent. For months, he felt trapped in a job he didn't enjoy, which led him to go to bed each night with a spirit of frustration and bitterness. But by beginning to practice gratitude in his nightly prayers, his perspective began to change. Instead of focusing on what he disliked about his job, he began to thank God for the opportunities he had, for the people he met, and for the lessons he was learning. Although his work situation didn't change immediately, his attitude did. And this prepared him to receive with joy the blessings God had for him in the future. In Psalm 104, we are invited, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. This passage not only describes how we should approach God, but also shows us the transformative power of gratitude. When you choose to thank, you are entering God's presence with a heart ready to acknowledge his goodness, which not only changes your attitude, but also your relationship with him. Gratitude also protects us from discontentment and comparison, which are common traps in our culture. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more, thanking God for what we already have is an act of spiritual resistance. In Philippians 4:11 through 13, Paul writes, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. This contentment is not natural. It is something we cultivate, and gratitude is one way we do it. A father shared how this principle changed the dynamics in his family. For years, their nights were filled with tension and arguments, creating a heavy atmosphere before bed. But he decided to begin gathering his family each night to pray together and thank God for the blessings of the day. At first it was difficult because they were used to focusing on the problems, but little by little, this habit transformed the atmosphere in their home. The arguments decreased, and their family began closing each day with a spirit of unity and gratitude. Gratitude also prepares us to face the future with hope. By remembering what God has done for you, you are building a foundation of faith that gives you confidence that He will continue to be faithful. In Psalm 118:24, we are reminded, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." This attitude of joy and gratitude does not depend on our circumstances, but on our relationship with the God who controls all things. When you choose to end your day with gratitude, you are also strengthening your relationship with God. A thankful prayer is a reminder of His goodness and faithfulness, bringing you closer to His heart. In Colossians 3:17, we are exhorted, "And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him." This call to gratitude is not only for good moments, but for every aspect of our lives, including our nightly prayers. As you close your eyes tonight, think about the blessings God has given you. Maybe it was a day full of challenges. But if you look closely, you will find evidence of His goodness. An encouraging word, an unexpected solution, or simply the strength to keep going. By thanking for these things, you are reaffirming your trust in His character and allowing that gratitude to transform your rest and your faith. This habit will not only change how you end your day, but also how you start the next, because a grateful heart is better prepared to receive God's blessings. Praying before bed with gratitude is not just a spiritual act, it is a practice that transforms your life from the inside out. When you close your eyes at the end of the day, you are initiating a crucial moment, spiritually preparing for what is to come. The prayer before sleep is not just an act of surrender or gratitude. It is also a preparation for the new day that God has reserved for you. In these moments, by giving Him what you've lived through, you are opening yourself to the work He wants to do in your life. As you rest, it's not just about sleeping. It's about allowing God to renew your spirit and give you clarity to face the future with faith and purpose. Jesus taught us to trust in God's daily provision, a principle that extends both to the day that ends and the one that begins. In Matthew 6:34, He says, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." This passage invites us not only to rest in God's sovereignty, but also to recognize that His grace is sufficient for each day. When you pray before bed, you are placing your concerns about tomorrow in His hands, trusting that He will equip you for what is to come. A woman shared how this practice transformed her way of dealing with daily stress. For years, her nights were filled with uncontrollable thoughts about what she had to do the next day. Each pending task and each possible obstacle overwhelmed her, stealing her sleep and leaving her exhausted upon waking. But one day, she decided to begin praying specifically for the next day, entrusting her plans to God and asking for His direction. That simple action helped her change her perspective. Instead of worrying, She learned to trust that God was working out the details even while she slept. Nighttime prayer is an invitation to rest, knowing that God is already preparing the way for you. In Proverbs 16:9, we're reminded, in their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. This verse shows us that while we may plan, it is God who ultimately has control. When you entrust your plans before bed, you are not only recognizing His control, but also allowing Him to align your desires with His perfect purpose. Jesus Himself modeled this dependence on the Father in the way He prayed before facing important decisions or challenges. He spent time in prayer, seeking the Father's guidance and strength. In Luke 6:12, we are told, one of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. This act not only strengthened his connection with the Father, but also prepared him to fulfill his mission with clarity and purpose. Similarly, when you choose to pray before bed, you are allowing God to prepare you to walk in His will the next day. Spiritual preparation for a new day also includes asking God for wisdom and discernment. In James 1:05, we are encouraged, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. This verse reminds us that we don't face tomorrow alone. God is willing to guide us in every decision, if only we ask. A man shared how this practice helped him overcome a season of uncertainty in his professional life. After losing his job, each day seemed filled with difficult decisions and unanswered questions. But by incorporating nightly prayer into his routine, he began to seek God's wisdom for every step. Though the answers didn't come immediately, this time of communion with God gave him the peace and clarity he needed to move forward with confidence. Night prayer is also an act of surrender, a way of recognizing that our strength is limited, but God's is infinite. In Psalm 127:2 it says, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for He grants sleep to those He loves. This passage reminds us that our rest doesn't depend solely on what we do, but on our willingness to trust God. When you pray before bed, you are saying, Lord, I have done everything I can. Now I trust you to do what I cannot. Spiritual preparation also involves asking God for protection and strength to face the trials of tomorrow. In Ephesians 6:10-11, Paul exhorts us, finally, be strong in the Lord and His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. This call to wear the armor of God is not just for moments of spiritual battle. It is an invitation to walk in His power and protection daily. When you pray before bed, you are asking Him to clothe you with His strength to face whatever comes, with courage and faith. A family shared how this habit transformed their dynamics. Every night they gathered to pray, not only for what they had lived through, but also for what was yet to come. They asked for God's protection over their home, guidance in important decisions, and His presence in every moment. Over time, this habit not only strengthened their faith, but also gave them a sense of unity and purpose as a family. Nighttime prayer also prepares us to face the day with gratitude and joy. Instead of worrying about what might go wrong, we can thank God for the opportunities He will bring. In Psalm 118:24, we are reminded, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This verse invites us to begin each day with an attitude of gratitude, knowing that God has already prepared good works for us to walk in. When you pray before bed, you are also allowing God to renew your mind and spirit. This time of communion with Him helps you release negative thoughts and fill yourself with His truth. In Romans 12:02 it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. This process of renewal begins when you choose to dedicate time to God, allowing Him to shape your perspective and give you the clarity you need to walk in His purpose. Each night, as you close your eyes, remember that you are in the hands of the God who not only knows your tomorrow, but has also prepared a perfect plan for you. Night prayer is not just a spiritual act. It is a preparation for walking in faith, knowing that His faithfulness never fails. As you surrender your dreams, worries, and plans, you can rest with the confidence that He is working in every detail. This time not only transforms how you end the day, but also how you start the next, with a heart filled with peace, purpose, and hope. Time began to feel clarity about the steps he should take. What initially seemed like an uncomfortable habit became the anchor of his faith. In Isaiah 15, God reminds us that in repentance and rest is our salvation. In quietness and trust is our strength. This passage shows us that stillness is not weakness. It is a place of strength because in it we find God. By praying before bed, you can create that space where His voice becomes clearer and His direction more evident. Nightly prayer also helps us discern His will for our lives. Often our minds are filled with ideas, plans, and worries that can cloud our spiritual vision. But in the stillness of the night, we can bring all those things to God and ask for clarity. Subscribe and comment 111 to share this message of hope with your friends and family. In Proverbs 3:5-6, we are instructed, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This act of trust, combined with the willingness to listen, opens the door for God to guide us in uncertain moments. A young man shared how this practice changed his perspective on an important decision. He was considering moving to another city for a new job, but had many doubts. Every night he asked God for direction and then stayed silent, waiting. Though at first he didn't hear anything, over time he began to feel an inexplicable peace when thinking about staying. This feeling of peace was enough to make his decision, and later he could see how God was working through that time of waiting. Stillness also allows us to recognize God's voice amid distractions. In John 10:27, Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." This verse assures us that as children of God, we can hear His voice if we are willing to stop and listen. By praying before bed, you are tuning your spiritual ear, training yourself to recognize His guidance in every area of your life. A married couple shared how this practice strengthened their relationship with God and with each other. Each night, after praying together, they took a few minutes to reflect in silence, asking God to speak to them about His will for their family. This time not only gave them direction in important decisions, but it also helped them stay united in faith and purpose. Nightly prayer, combined with moments of silence, not only connects us with God, but also transforms our perspective, helping us see our circumstances from His point of view, reminding us that His plan is always bigger and more perfect than ours. In Isaiah 55:8-9, God declares, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. The heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This truth gives us the confidence that even when we don't understand what's happening, God is working in ways we can't imagine. At the end of each day, remember that God is waiting to meet you in the stillness. You don't need elaborate words or detailed explanations, just a heart willing to listen. This time will not only strengthen your faith, but also give you the peace and direction you need to walk in His purpose. God's voice, though soft, has the power to transform your life, and the night is the perfect time to open your heart and allow Him to speak. When the day ends and you kneel to pray, you are strengthening the most important bond in your life, your relationship with God. This moment is not just a spiritual practice, but an invitation to deepen a connection that holds the power to affect every aspect of your existence. Nightly prayer is not just a simple end to the day, it is an act of intimacy that nourishes your soul, brings you closer to your Creator, and reminds you that no matter the circumstances, you are in His hands. In Revelation 3:20, we find a promise that reveals God's heart. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me. This verse shows us that God is always present, waiting for us to open our hearts to have communion with Him. Praying before bed is a response to that invitation, a gesture that says, Lord, here I am. I give you all that I am, and I want to know you more deeply. A woman shared how this habit transformed her spiritual life. Although she had been a believer for years, she felt that a relationship with God was superficial, limited to Sundays at church and a few quick prayers during the day. However, she began dedicating her nights to intentional prayer, not just asking for things, but seeking to know God more. This time became her refuge, a space where she could open her heart and feel His presence in a way she had never experienced before. Over time, this practice not only deepened her faith, but also changed the way she faced each day, because she knew she was not alone. Nightly prayer reminds us that God is more than a provider or a guide. He is our loving Father who longs for a close relationship with us. In Psalm 139:1-3, David expresses this truth in awe. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. This level of intimacy is possible because God is not a distant being. He is deeply interested in every detail of our lives. Nightly prayer is an opportunity to enter into that intimate communion with Him. Jesus Himself modeled this close connection with the Father. In John 17:21-23, while praying for His disciples, He expressed His desire that we all experience the same unity He had with the Father. This prayer reflects not only His love, but also His longing for us to enter into a deep and meaningful relationship with God. By praying before bed, you are responding to that call, allowing your relationship with Him to grow in trust, love, and closeness. A young man shared how this practice changed his perspective on prayer. He used to see prayer as just another task on his to-do list, something he did out of obligation. But when he began dedicating his nights to talking to God, he discovered that prayer was much more than words. It was an encounter with the living God. In those moments, he felt he could be completely honest, sharing his struggles and joys and hearing God speak through His Word and the peace that filled his heart. Praying before bed also strengthens our trust in God because it reminds us that He is faithful and worthy of our dependence. In 2 Timothy 2:13 we are assured, if we are faithless, He remains faithful, for He cannot disown Himself. This reminder gives us the assurance that even when we fail, God remains constant in His love and care for us. By spending time with him each night, we are building trust, allowing his faithfulness to strengthen our faith. A man, after facing a series of personal and professional failures, found in nightly prayer the strength he needed to move forward. Each night he poured out his heart before God, confessing his fears and doubts, but also reminding himself that God was working in his life, even when he couldn't see the results immediately. Nightly prayer is also an act of worship, a time to recognize God's greatness and goodness. In Psalm 29:01, we are exhorted, "Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness." This time is not just about asking for things or solving problems. It is an opportunity to praise God for who he is and for all that he has done. This act of worship not only glorifies God, but also transforms our hearts, filling us with gratitude and awe for his love. A family shared how this practice strengthened their relationship with God and with each other. Every night they gathered to pray, beginning with words of praise and gratitude for what God had done in their lives. This habit not only reminded them of his faithfulness, but also united them as a family, helping them keep God at the center of their home. In Psalm 63:68, David describes how nightly prayer filled him with joy and strength. "On my bed, I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me." This passage shows us that prayer before sleep is not only a spiritual act, but also a source of comfort and renewal for the soul. When you choose to dedicate this time to God, you are also developing a habit that will impact every aspect of your life. By beginning and ending each day with him, you are strengthening a relationship that sustains you in difficult times and fills you with joy in times of abundance. In John 15, verse 5, Jesus reminds us, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." This verse invites us to stay connected to him at all times, and nightly prayer is a powerful way to cultivate that connection. When you close your eyes tonight, remember that every word you speak, every thought you surrender, is a seed you are planting in your relationship with God. These nights of prayer will not only transform your days, but also your entire life, because they will lead you to a place of intimacy and trust that nothing and no one can break. This is the power of a deep relationship with the God who never fails. Praying to God before bed is not just a routine act. It is a decision that transforms the soul. Throughout this message, we have explored the reasons why this practice has the power to deeply impact your relationship with God and the way you face life. By closing your day with prayer, you are not only talking to your Creator, but you are building a bridge that connects you to his peace, his purpose, and his faithfulness, reminding you that nothing escapes his control. Nightly prayer is a unique space where you can release all the burdens you accumulated throughout the day. In his infinite compassion, Jesus invites us to come to him with our concerns and struggles, assuring us that in his presence we will find rest for our souls. In Matthew 11:28, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." This rest is not only physical but spiritual, a release from the weight we carry and an opportunity to trust in his plan. When you choose to end your day by handing over your burdens to God, you are declaring that you trust in his sovereignty and his ability to handle what is beyond your control. In Psalm 55:22, we are encouraged. "Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. This act of surrender not only frees your mind, but also strengthens your faith, reminding you that God is always working on your behalf, even in times when you can't see it. Moreover, praying before bed allows you to reflect on God's faithfulness throughout the day. This time is a reminder that His hand was with you every moment, from the most challenging trials to the small details that show His care. In Lamentations 3:22 through 23, we find a truth that renews our faith. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Reflecting on this faithfulness not only fills your heart with gratitude, but also gives you the confidence that His love and grace will be with you the next day. Gratitude is another powerful reason to make nightly prayer a daily habit. When you choose to end the day by thanking God, you are cultivating a heart that values His goodness and provision. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, we are urged, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. This attitude of gratitude not only transforms your perspective, but also brings you closer to God, because you are recognizing His hand in every aspect of your life. A woman shared how this habit changed her relationship with God and her perspective on difficult days. For years, she focused on what wasn't going well, the things she hadn't accomplished, and the problems that seemed unsolvable. But when she started thanking God every night, her heart began to fill with peace and hope. At the end of each day, she could see how God was working, even in the small details that had once gone unnoticed. This shift in focus not only strengthened her faith, but also transformed the way she faced each new day. When you make nightly prayer a habit, you are also preparing your spirit for what's to come. This time is not just a closing. It is a preparation to face the future with faith and trust. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, we are instructed, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. This verse reminds us that by entrusting our plans and decisions to God, we are allowing His wisdom and guidance to direct us toward the purpose He has for us. A man shared how this habit transformed his life during a season of uncertainty. Every night he asked God for direction for the next day, handing over his concerns and seeking His will. Although the answers did not come immediately, that time of prayer gave him the peace and clarity he needed to make confident decisions. Over time, he could see how God was guiding every step, even when he didn't understand the bigger picture. Nightly prayer is also an opportunity to hear God's voice in the silence. In a world full of distractions, this moment of stillness is a space where you can receive His peace and comfort. In 1 Kings 19:11-12, we find the story of Elijah, who heard God not in the wind, earthquake, or fire, but in a gentle whisper. This passage teaches us that often God speaks in the silence when we are willing to listen. When you pray before bed and allow Him to fill your heart, you are opening a space for His voice to guide you and His presence to renew you. Jesus also taught us the importance of seeking God at all times during His ministry. Often He withdrew to pray, finding in those moments of communion with the Father the strength and clarity needed to fulfill His purpose. In Luke 5:16, we are told, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. This example reminds us that prayer is not only for difficult times, but also to strengthen our relationship with God and renew our faith each day. At the end of this message, my prayer is that you don't see nightly prayer as just a simple practice, but as an invitation to experience a deeper, more meaningful relationship with God. Each time you kneel at the end of the day, you are strengthening an eternal bond with the Creator of the universe, a bond that sustains you, renews you, and fills you with peace. Remember, it's not about saying a perfect prayer or finding the right words. God does not seek perfection. He seeks a heart willing to approach Him with humility and sincerity. In Hebrews 4:16, we are encouraged. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. This verse reminds us that we can come to Him just as we are, knowing that His love and grace are sufficient to cover our weaknesses and failures. Your life can be transformed when you choose to prioritize this moment each night. Not because prayer is a magical ritual, but because it connects you with the God who has the power to change all things. Every night as you close your eyes in prayer, you are planting seeds of faith, gratitude, and trust that will bear fruit in your daily life. As you prepare to rest tonight, remember that God is with you. He is your refuge in times of uncertainty, your strength in trials, and your guide on the path ahead. By handing over your burdens, reflecting on His faithfulness, thanking Him for His blessings, preparing your spirit for tomorrow, and listening to His voice, you are cultivating a relationship that will transform not only your nights, but every aspect of your life. This is the importance of praying before bed, a daily encounter with the God who loves you beyond measure and who will never cease to work in your favor. In conclusion, praying before bedtime is not just a routine practice, but a powerful invitation to experience a deeper, more intimate relationship with God. It is in these quiet moments, when we surrender our burdens and listen for His voice, that we find peace, guidance, and strength for the days ahead. As we close our eyes each night, we are reminded that God is with us, offering His unwavering love, grace, and direction. This simple act of prayer transforms our hearts, refines our faith, and helps us walk in His purpose. By making prayer a habit, we not only enrich our spiritual lives, but also open ourselves to the limitless possibilities that come from being in constant communion with our Creator. So as you lay down to rest tonight, remember that in these precious moments with God, your life is being shaped, your soul is being renewed, and you are being prepared for the new day ahead. Join our community of believers. Hit the subscribe button now and comment 111.